Hello and welcome to the second lecture in the module Reason and Persuasion. And in this lecture I want to talk about essay writing, and I want to think about essay writing as an exercise in rhetoric, right? As an exercise in reason and persuasion. When you write an essay, one way of thinking about what you're trying to do is you're trying to persuade somebody to give you a high grade. So how are you going to do that? How are you going to think rhetorically, persuasively about how to achieve that? Well, one question that might occur to you is, why do we make you write essays at all, right? There are other things you could do, reflective blogs and précis and so on and so forth. Well, for one thing, we need a standardized task, right? So in higher education, we have to give people grades and have comparable outcomes. And so then there needs to be some standardized task that we can know in advance what the criteria are. But more to the point, the undergraduate essay is a kind of student version of the research papers that academics write. So you should think of yourself as an undergraduate student, not as a kind of advanced A-level student, as somebody who's like A-level but then some. You should think of yourself as being a kind of beginner version of a university researcher. So you should think of your essays as being a bit like sort of beginner versions of the research papers that researchers write. And that's the way to flatter and persuade your audience, because your audience for your essays is university academics. So if you write an essay that reads like a research paper, the kind of thing that I would write, well, that's a way of tuning into me. That's a way of conveying the idea that you are on the same wavelength as me, right? Because you're writing the same kind of document. Okay. So what I want to do, well, I want to look at introductory paragraphs. The thing you need to understand is that while you write your essay, you write one essay. For every given task, you write one. For me, they arrive in bulk, right? For me, student essays are a kind of mass phenomenon, right? And you need to know this, and you need to have some understanding of the effect of reading, a stack of essays that are all on the same sort of subject. You get this kind of groundhog effect, and you need to know that that's what you're writing your way into. And the first page, the first paragraph, is of course really important because it's the first impression. It's often said that a lot of decisions about job applications, job interviews rather, are made as the applicant walks from the door to come in and sit down. The same is true of essays. So I'm going to look at some first paragraphs very quickly, just to get that sense. So here's one: what philosophy might do to us. So here's somebody that's very common. We'll see this in the initial paragraphs we're going to look at now. Here's somebody who doesn't really understand why their essay is worth writing. Can any practical thing come from this foolishness? All right. So this person doesn't really believe in what they're doing. So they reach for something. Okay, how can I somehow motivate this essay, even though I don't really understand why it's worth writing? Well, there's the antiquity of the problem, right? If philosophers have been asking the question for thousands of years, philosophers have been asking, right? Well, yeah, but people have been asking, why dogs wag their tails when they're happy, whereas cats flick their tails when they're annoyed for thousands of years. It doesn't mean it's a deep question, right? the antiquity of the problem is just kind of poor substitute for a real motivation. We'll pick out two philosophers, Heidegger and Socrates. Why them? Well, because I guess they're on the syllabus. There's going to be some reason why they're on the syllabus, and if you're going to write the essay, you ought to know what it is. Why are they right? This is the deepest of all questions, and therefore it cannot be okay. There's a smarter version of saying that, which is to say, this is a very deep question, and therefore it's hard to see how it can be answered, right? That's plausible. Say, this is the deepest of all questions, just invites the reader to try and think of a deeper one. And to say, and therefore it cannot be answered. Well, first of all, how do you know that? You want to say something like that, you need to argue that point. But anyway, it also raises the question, well, if it can't be answered, what are you doing in this essay, right? So this is a first paragraph from somebody who can see the difficulties involved in writing a philosophy essay, but doesn't really have solutions, right? So I already know that this is going to be a bit of a mess, and I'm discouraged. I don't really want to read any more of this. Let's have another one. For centuries, human beings have been debating it. Again, the antiquity of the problem, instead of some real reason why the question is important. So there's an interesting thought that arguing about the use of reason is particularly difficult because you have to study the thing that is being used in that moment. Okay, that's an interesting thought. Maybe we'll stay with it. Maybe we'll develop it. No, what we're going to do here is say two classic thinkers were Descartes and Pascal. Well, all right, so they're canonical. Classic is, what is it? It's bad advertising speak. I don't know why these two characters are important, why I'm being invited to write about them rather than, say, I don't know, Heidegger and Socrates. But they're the people I've been given to write about, so I will. And then we have bits of stuff from the notes come tumbling out. Then we get into. Descartes wasn't really a skeptic. Again, we're moving too fast. Okay, philosophy of education. We just announce that it's important. Well, you don't need to do that. First of all, it's if you're writing an essay on it, already we agree that it's important. Then we have some very disputable things. The older the teacher, the better the wisdom. Well, it doesn't really follow. I know some old teachers who are as lacking in wisdom now as they were. They do say some people have 30 years of teaching experience and some people have 1 year of teaching experience repeated 30 times, right? Try to find the first sort of teacher, not the second sort. So I already know that this person is saying something that I know to be false, but they're all over the place. There's no plan here. We go from disputable claims about the age of teachers to something about furniture. This person doesn't have a plan. The existence of God for centuries. Oh no, already I'm discouraged. Already I don't want to read any more. The idea of God has been, right. Again, I don't know what the plan is, but I can see that the effective strategy is just to plunge into lecture notes. Here's another one. Do we have souls? So this is a kind of standard thing. I know I'm writing an essay. I know I have to set out my plan. I've been told that I have to say what I'm going to do and then do it and then say what I've said. Well, this writer will attempt a reasoned explanation in defense of my views After careful explanation of my own views, thoughts, and careful examination of selected materials, I have come to this conclusion. The question of human beings having souls and their survival after the body is deceased is not an easily argued topic. Right. So we have earnest expressions of the need for careful thought, but the conclusion we come to is that this is a difficult problem, which we knew already, right? So what this is telling me is that I can't expect anything interesting from this person. Hasn't got an answer, and they're effectively telling me that in the first paragraph, even while they're doing the thing they're supposed to do, which is to say what you're going to say. Right, this next one. So we have a long quotation. We are then faced with a simple alternative, blah, 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 up to validation of our certainty. And we're not told who said this, right? Somebody said this, some important philosopher. Apparently it's important thought. We're not going to spend any time unpacking it. A quotation is, if you're going to give a quotation, you then have to do something with it. You can't let it speak for itself. You have to say, and here's the reason why I'm giving you this quotation. Here's what I take from it. Here's what it contributes to my argument. This person doesn't do any of that. They then charge on with a famous philosopher. The fame of philosophers isn't important to why they're important philosophers. Anyway, a famous philosopher, but not the person who gave the quotation that we've just read. A famous philosopher, René Descartes, once stated, I am, therefore I exist. So the thing I can know about Descartes without even reading him. And then on we go and plunging into notes. I have no clue where this paper is going to go. And neither evidently does the author. Okay, Anselm's Ontological Argument. Again, here is somebody who doesn't really want to write this essay, who thinks that the whole question is a load of nonsense, and they kind of signal this. Perhaps during a moment of enlightenment or starvation-induced hallucination. It's very unlikely that Anselm invented the ontological argument whilst off his head. This argument is debated for almost 1,000 years, right? Shows no sign of going away soon, though evidently this author desperately wishes it would. Don't do this. Don't indicate contempt for the question. And again, we have no hint of a clue here, of a plan. Last one. My opinion on Director Hoover's essay. As a law enforcement officer myself, I feel that Director Hoover's essay gets it right. I totally believe in the death penalty. Okay, so this person's told us that they're a law enforcement officer, and this informs their reaction to the essay. What you've got to do then is share some of the experience. This writer doesn't do that. They then make a general claim that the death penalty deters violent crime. For that we need some stats. For that we need some evidence. You can draw on your own experience. So if this person said, as a law enforcement officer, I think the death penalty is important. And here are some experiences that I had as a police officer. And I'm going to describe them vividly. I'm going to use the gift of writing to take you to the scene where my experience happened, and that makes a difference to this question. Then you're in business, right? You can talk about your own experiences. But if you're going to do that, do it for real. Don't just say, I'm a law enforcement officer, and so you should just believe what I'm telling you. And again, there's no promise of logical structure here. We're just off and running. Okay, so now what I want you to do is go and look at some old essays and have a look at of your own academic writing, and have a look at the first paragraphs and see what they suggest about what's going to follow. What first impression do they make? Do they open the door, walk in and slouch and have gravy stains down their shirts? Or, are they encouraging? Do they encourage you to read on because here is clearly someone with a plan? Okay, so you go and do that, and then I will give you my bestiary of general ways in which undergraduate essays can disappoint. Talk to you soon.